So how bad is the economic trade war for us in the trucking industry? Let me explain. There are 325,000 truck drivers in Canada, of which 120,000 of them cross the border weekly. That is 37% of Canadian truck drivers that are dependent on cross-border trade. Now, in the US, you have 3.54 million truck drivers, and of which 40,000 Americans cross the border into Canada. That's 1.1% of American truck drivers that come to Canada. So come February 1st, Donald Trump slaps 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and an additional 10% on China. However, as of February 3rd, this morning, there has been a deal reached between the Mexican president and Trump to pause the tariffs for an additional 30 days. All right, so here are the numbers that matter. Canada exports $440 billion to the US annually, with $115 billion coming from crude and oil and petroleum. Trump confirmed that Canadian crude oil will only face a 10% tariff, not the full 25%. In response, on February 1st, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau retaliated with a 25% tariff of his own on $155 billion worth of American goods. Every year, over $750 billion US in imports and exports move between the Canada and the US border, and 68% of all that trade is currently done by trucking. That means that over 30,000 trucks cross the Canadian-US border every single day. But it's not just Canada and the US feeling the heat. China has vowed corresponding countermeasures against the US after Trump's tariff announcements and plans to take action through the World Trade Organization. When it comes to Mexico, well, they just reached a deal to pause for 30 days. So here's the real impact on trucking. Before we dive into how this affects our industry, let's acknowledge Trump himself admitted that these tariffs will cause short-term pain for Americans. Now let's talk about Canadian trucking fleets, the ones that will get hit the hardest, not just because the cost of goods is going to start to rise, not just because the interest rates are going to increase, but because 1 in every 3 Canadian truck drivers rely on cross-border freight. Even if these tariffs only affect 5% of cross-border trade, that means 6,000 jobs. Now imagine if it affects 15% or 20%. We're talking about 18,000 jobs and maybe even a potential 24,000 jobs. And that's just trucking. What about manufacturing plants and their workers? This trade war isn't just a headline, it's a direct hit to our trucking industry. Make sure you stay tuned to this channel so I can keep you updated on the latest news on this trade war. I'm Ronan, and I'll catch you in my next video.